We are thrilled to welcome Nabiha Saklayen, co-founder and CEO of Cellino Bio, to the show today. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's so amazing to have you back on, Nabiha, from the founder spotlight and just dive into this full, tell-on experience about Cellino. We're so excited to dive in here. To kick things off, could you just share a brief personal intro with us, Nabiha?
Yes, absolutely. Happy to. So I'm Nabiha. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Cellino, as you mentioned, and background, did a Ph.D. in physics at Harvard, worked on some very interdisciplinary scientific topics, which was very exciting. So my theme in life is convergence. How do I work at the interface of different sciences? So I'm a physicist by training, and I ended up transitioning into biology during my PhD, invented several new ways to engineer cells with lasers and nanomaterials, which was really fun. That's what started my journey on the entrepreneurship track. I never imagined for myself that I would be an entrepreneur. So everything I've done since then has been exciting and surprising and fulfilling in so many ways. So I've been leading Cellino for 6 years, ever since I finished my PhD, and it's been a fabulous, fantastic ride. Other things about me, I grew up traveling the world with my parents. I was born in Saudi Arabia. I grew up in Germany, Sri Lanka. My parents are from Bangladesh, spent a little bit of time there. So I bring a very global perspective to company building and culture, and team building as well. So it's a little bit about me.
Perfect introduction, Nabiha. Thank you again so much. And before we dive in too deep here, can you just share a brief personal intro on Cellino itself?
Yes, Cellino is a biomanufacturing company. We're building a technology that can manufacture human stem cells in an autonomous, scalable, low-cost way. So that's a lot of words put together. What it means is right now, human cells, specifically stem cells that would be used for therapeutic application to derive therapeutic cells, are made by hand. So you have a scientist sitting at a bench looking at cells by eye, tweaking knobs in a bioreactor by hand, making those decisions just with their brilliant brains. It's pretty amazing what they can do. So a lot of the cells that are being tested in patients right now are made completely by hand. We work in the personalized iPSC-based therapy space. So what we're working towards is building just a full autonomous process. So making these cells from beginning to end with machine learning, driving the process, a proprietary laser process to do the cell culture and bring down the cost, increase efficiency, and all the good stuff. So that's who we are. We're a very multidisciplinary company. I would say at our core, we're a hardware company, a lot of physicists, a lot of hardware engineers, optics, fluidics, but we have some really solid foundations in AI and stem cell biology.
And as both a international traveler and someone that has such an interdisciplinary background, it's not surprising to see the amazing technology that Cellino's put together and the team that has to back it to create something like that. So thanks again for the great introduction. As you mentioned, Cellino, as you mentioned, Nabiha, in 2017, you helped co-founded Cellino, spinning out of Harvard, with a mission to make these personalized autologous cell therapies accessible for all patients at scale, right? Rather than this at-hand ad hoc process. So just to begin things and just take a step back, Nabiha, could you just tell us more about the genesis of Cellino? What was the spark that started it all?
Yes, I mean, it's always fun to reflect back and think about all the things that happened that led to this moment where you and I are having this conversation. It's been like such an incredible journey, and I'm filled with gratitude. I think that's a word that comes up for me all the time, because every day my job is mind-blowing because it is so rewarding. It's so creative. It's all of the things that I would hope and wish for everyone to feel in their jobs. I get to do that. And my story was I was in grad school building a laser-based technology. It's a new cell culture technique. And I collaborated with amazing biologists during grad school. So David Scadden, Derek Rossi, George Church, and they all happen to be very entrepreneurial. They're very application driven. So that was my journey. So as I was working on the research in the lab, there was a tremendous outpour of encouragement. Like, oh, what are you going to do after grad school? Maybe you should do a startup. And I just didn't know what that meant. So I was like, I don't know what that means. I was either going to do a postdoc or get a job in industry. What is the startup thing? That's just not something I've experienced even in my family. Everybody's very academically driven, and we have PhDs in my grandfather's generation, but like I don't know if we've had any entrepreneurs. So that was the start. And what I said to myself, well, hey, what if I take a year and explore product market fit? Like, is there anything useful about this laser processing of cells? And here we are now, 6 years into the future. We're still at it. It's been amazing. And just the refinement that's happened on the technology application fit is mind blowing. Like, I mean, what we do today at Cellino is beyond my wildest imaginations of what I'd imagined we would be doing that first summer out of grad school. So that's been amazing. And a huge part of that is having the right co-founders. I definitely want to talk about that because when people ask me, what is my number one advice for anybody building a company? Like, find the smartest people that you can possibly find that you have shared values with. And I'm very grateful to have had that opportunity and experience with my co-founder. So Marina and I, we met in the lab. She's a fellow physicist. And it was just easy because when our collaborators were saying, hey, you should do a startup, you should do a startup, I sat her down and I said, what do you think? I don't know what this means, but if you're interested, I'd be happy to explore. She said, yeah, let's do it. What do we have to lose? So that's what I love about Marina. She's very brave and she's very open to opportunities and possibilities. And I don't know if I would have done the startup if she hadn't said, like, let's just try it. What happens if we try it? And we just have had the best working relationship now going on a decade, which is awesome. And then we met Matthias, who is my CTO, our other co-founder, and he was recommended as a mentor. Matthias has built multiple photonics ventures, has been CEO multiple times. He's a wonderful person. He should be our mentor. And I'm so grateful that we had this spark, our first meeting, that the second meeting, we both said, hey, let's do this startup together. It's quite a story. I mean, it was very natural and he's just like the best. So having that balance of first time founders versus somebody who's experienced, like we just have always been super creative and we've made good choices. We've been very fiscally responsible. I mean, when you think about our journey, we've been around for 6 years, but the first 3 or 4 years it was like a handful of people on the team. We were all tinkering and doing everything at once. And we just, we've always been motivated to do the right thing, which is if there's an application fit for this technology, let's figure that out. And until we figure that out, we're not interested in spending and burning through a lot of cash. So kind of an amazing journey. We learned a lot. We went through a lot of ups and downs. We were a small team, about maybe 10 people when the pandemic started. And that moment, when I was looking at how much runway we had, it was existential. It's like, we don't know what's going to happen to the venture capital world. And then it was interesting how that seed round really came together because it happened primarily because our technology at that time was cloud-based already. So the team could work from home. And investors are like, oh, you're one of the few biotechs that can work from home during the pandemic. That's interesting. What would you do with like 5 million? I was like, oh, okay, here's what I would do. And then the raise got bigger. And here we are.
Yeah, and one thing led to another. And I mean, the scale with Cellino in the past 6 years has been phenomenal. And I'm really glad that you dove into the co-founder experience as well. I think you pointed out a lot of important archetypes just right at the start, right? Even just noting the spark, something on the personal side that was just so special to you from the start. I think is a call just to all founders early on. So I appreciate you setting it up, especially just from the early side of Cellino, that was one of the key markers of you were onto something special. While we're in Genesis talks and we're talking about kind of the early foundations of Cellino, I just wanted to press this a little bit further beyond what you discussed initially, Nabiha, around just developing efficacious cell therapies. I think your side around it is it's a very artisanal process, right? It's by hand, it's individual. Could you maybe dive into more of the systemic issues around cell therapies, some of the core drivers around why Cellino just needs to be a solution that exists in the current biotech stack?
Oh, what a great question to. Thank you. I love it. Uh, it's like a fascinating time in medicine because when you look at medicine as a modalities, just looking at the different categories of medicine, like we're going to completely see a transformation in how we treat disease over the next decade, and it is exciting. So just a week ago, we had two really powerful announcements that I wrote a short blog post about. One was Vertex's news on diabetes, and then Blue Rock slash Bayer, their news around the Parkinson's therapy. And it's incredible because we're shifting from a world where we treat symptoms, that's all we can do, to wow, we could even reverse the disease, we could cure the disease. And when you think about a disease indication such as diabetes or Parkinson's or heart disease, all of these age-related macular degeneration, that's the area that we're collaborating on with our first clinical partner. Um, it's just so exciting to think, wow, the future is going to be so different. It's not going to be about managing the disease, but possibly a cure. So one thing I want to mention here is there are going to be many different flavors of cell therapies. And that is amazing. We need all the flavors. I think over the past few years, unfortunately, we've gotten too much into the mindset of, oh, it's going to be autologous, personalized, or allogeneic off the shelf, or it's going to be gene edited. It's like only this is the only thing that's going to work, or this is going to be work. And I come at it and say, I think we're going to need all of them because each therapy is going to be different. Each disease is going to be different. Each patient is going to be different. The amount of time they have is going to be different. So with that said, where Cellino comes in is we focus on the personalized autologous cells because based on what our clinical partners are telling us, they're working on disease areas where they feel strongly that it is ideal to have a personalized solution where the patient does not have to undergo immunosuppression. And there are some benefits to it because, of course, immunosuppression is not great from an overall health perspective, especially for older patients. And a lot of these diseases, like age-related macular degeneration, which is blindness, is affecting elderly patients. And yeah, just the level of rejection is going to be lower with a personalized cell therapy. So those are all very, very exciting ideas. And where we are right now is the first clinical trials in the personalized induced pluripotent stem cell therapy space. They have launched, which is exciting. And all of those cells were made by hand for on the order of a few patients to about a dozen patients. Very exciting. So we'll start to see the first safety data sets, the first efficacy initial readouts that say, oh, this could work for blindness. This could work for heart disease, which is exciting. But since we already talked about those cells being made by hand is a real bottleneck, we're coming in and we're manufacturing for the next stages of the clinical trial, where we might need hundreds of patient-specific doses, which right now, or thousands going into phase 3 and commercial, but right now that capacity does not exist. There's just not enough physical scientists, brilliant humans in the world who can scale that out in a cost-effective manner. So that's where the industry is right now, and it's an exciting time though because the early clinical data from iPSC-based therapies and pluripotent stem cell-based therapies this year are exciting. So now it's the right time to solve the manufacturing piece so we get to higher consistency and low cost, and it's going to change the world.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up the question of scale from the beginning. I think questions and companies like Cellino obviously are trying to disrupt so many of these one-to-one, marketable sides, kind of the artisanal group that pharma has to deal with right now. And I think this question of scale and manufacturing is massive. I'd love to ask your own perspectives on kind of the future of cell therapy when it comes to that. But just before we even dive in deeper, we've talked briefly around what's useful, what's helpful around Cellino's platform itself. And just, this could really open up the world around personalized regenerative medicines for the first time, just using your platform at a basis to level set here, your platform itself is combining, label-free imaging and high-speed laser editing with machine learning to really automate cell reprogramming, expansion, and differentiation on highest levels. But from your own perspective, Nabiha, I just love to see what you're building at Cellino. What do you see as this kind of solution to this question of scale within pharma? As you mentioned, this is great for 1 to 2 to 3 patients, but when we're talking about magnitudes of hundreds, thousands, right, bringing cost barriers down, there's so much there. So I just love to get from your perspective what you're building, some of the tech just to begin with here.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about where we want to go is we want to be able to make patient-specific induced pluripotent stem cells as the first product. That's what we're automating at very low cost. So right now it's costing $250,000 or higher. We want to get that down by like 10x or more, however cheap we can get it. So the way to do it is to completely rethink how cell culture happens. Right now, when you think about cell culture, it's a lot of pipetting. It's a lot of cells are growing out. You're pipetting some of the cells into a new plate, open container. You're kind of transferring the cells again and again. You're having to remove cells that are unwanted. So especially in the iPSC process, there's a lot of like scraping away of cells, which is interesting, like, because it's literally taking a glass pipette and scraping away cells in a dish. So expensive and difficult to scale. So what we do is we automate all of those aspects of the cell culture process. So there's the characterization piece. I want to look at the cells and determine is this good or bad. We use AI to do that. And then we use a laser system that generates bubbles to remove cells from the cell culture dish. And so we're removing the cells we don't want, which is also interesting because that's not how cell culture traditionally happens, because a lot of times cell culture is about, splitting cells into new containers or getting rid of the cells you don't want. So we keep the cells we want. And because we have this AI-guided system that can select for the best cells, you can remove cells you don't want. So what it means is you might have one cell culture surface. You can keep your wanted cells on that surface for the entire process, whether it's 10 days, 30 days, 40 days, 60 days. And what it means is you really miniaturize the footprint that you need to run an entire complex, lengthy bioprocess to like one surface. And we love it because it changes how you can build the technology to support that type of cell culture. And our ultimate vision where we want to get by 2028 is have closed manufacturing systems where the cell culture is happening autonomously. So imaging, AI is guiding the cell culture process. The lasers removing cells, the fluidics are washing away the debris and the unwanted cells. It's just doing this for the entire duration of the biology. That is amazing because what it means is you're able to run multiple patient samples at the same time in parallel with pretty much minimal human oversight. And then it's getting low cost because you're really controlling the efficiency of the process and the reagents that are necessary. And also you're eliminating the need for a high-grade clean room, which turns out to be a huge cost factor in the current manual cell manufacturing processes. So we're very excited about that. So that's where we are. And we've built all the pieces. We're putting them all together. But ultimately, as I said, when we started the conversation, we are a hardware company and building hardware is expensive. So that's what we're going to have to work on to make sure we have enough capital to continue on that journey of the closed system. But where we are right now, it's very exciting because we have an automated biological bioprocess running in like a larger automated work cell that's doing automated imaging, liquid handling, laser scanning, but it's kind of the size of like, like a small room with that is enclosed, that is autonomous, that is cloud controlled. And it's what we've used it to do is build this autonomous direction of the process. How do we remove all the human steps And it's an exciting time at Cellino because we're really starting to push the boundaries of, oh, what are the humans going to be doing, like in terms of evaluating what's happening on their computer. And when is that not necessary anymore? That's kind of the question of the week at Cellino. When do we feel comfortable like saying, okay, now just do we need the humans looking at this every couple of days? So it's fascinating, even for my team to go through that, because we have some amazing biologists, cell therapy experts who are on the team and have done this by hand for decades, and now they get to do it at a computer screen. So I'm very excited, and you know, the things we're working on, we're collaborating with the National Eye Institute, as I mentioned, and they're testing our first iPSC lines coming off of the system. We've made cell lines from a diverse set of donors, and now we're going to see how they function in the differentiation space. Like, can we make retinal cells from these stem cells? They pass all the NQC, and then ultimately we want to take that further and test in preclinical studies, and then ultimately clinical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's amazing. I love the design section of where you all are as a team right now, deciding what the function is in humans, how you can reduce that, I guess, literal footprint, in a sense. But that's such an exciting time in the team. And I think when you're talking about the future, looking forward towards 2028, I kind of went down a vein of some of the design choices you and a team kind of just had to make around the company itself. I mean, just with any autologous cell therapy platform. And I know you had the debate between autologous and allogenic and you know, the side there, but with any of these platforms, the mindset of founders, you really have to design around the clinics and kind of just hopes to integrate the current treatment settings just to add no additional complexity to an already difficult field. There's already so much that happens in the clinic, right? And we've had this debate with a few founders on already with builders, but I'd just be curious from your perspective as a manufacturing side with Cellino. I mean, Nabiha, could you discuss how you and the team are just thinking of integrating Cellino into the current standard of care? You know, when this vision's kind of realized, you know, post 2028, when this platform is, you know, fully stacked out, what does this really look like in your mind?
Yeah, we think all about that all the time. That is highest priority for us, how to get this to patients. So one thing we actively focus on is staying very close to the pioneers and leaders in the cell therapy space, both auto and allo. And I should mention here, even though we are pushing this vision of low cost personalized iPSCs to enable autologous, everything we do on the technology front applies very strongly to allo as well. So we know this from a lot of our conversations with potential partners, and it's very exciting because I think a new way to do cell culture is very useful for a range of applications. And right now we're just doing reprogramming, making iPSCs, and what are we going to do in the differentiation space? What are we going to do in the QC space? So all of those are always running in parallel. So what we do is we stay very close to the expert. So a couple of exciting things that we are very thrilled to be a part of. My co-founder Marina is part of and leads several of the international consortiums on the autologous iPSC cell therapy space. And we have, you know, she's attending all of those meetings, she's representing us. We're actively engaged in the scientific community to do that. We're doing, you know, we're setting up collaborations with different clinical groups to start being deeply engaged so that the transition from where they are today to us is quite seamless. And it's like, it's an interesting situation because we're very eager to push this line of thinking and work over the next few years, because the first phase of the clinical trial, all the cells were made by hand, and that just won't be possible for a phase 2 once these clinical partners get there. So what does it mean to transition a manufacturing process onto the Cellino platform if this is the only way to scale, right? So that's a big responsibility for, it's a big deal for the clinical developer, for us, for the FDA. So we are very fortunate to work with some of the best regulatory groups on this. So we work very closely with Dark Horse Consulting, and they've been very successful in many cell therapy regulatory strategies over the past decade. So staying very close and not being afraid to talk about the risks. There's a ton of them. I mean, we just had a meeting where we're laying out the end-to-end process and thinking through like what the structure is going to be inside our cassette. And that was it. It's like, okay, we are really good at this piece, and they're like 30 other boxes that all need to go according to plan. And who's going to own that? Are we sure these are going to go according to plan? And it's all sorts of topics, like how the blood cells are collected, how are they QC'd, and then they come onto Cellino platform. Okay, then what? What about contamination from the donor material? What about when you're like filling the final vial out of your cassette? Apparently that's super high risk, I learned. So there's not enough innovation that has happened in that space. So just being very practical about all the challenges that remain, but being excited and being brave about let's tackle them head on, and then building a team that has done this many times. So not only are we have the technology expertise, but now we also have the cell therapy expertise in-house, and kind of continue to build the bioprocess, the quality management systems, technical operations, CMC. So now that part of the team is really starting to come together, and it's exciting because I'm meeting all these new team members. I'm like, I'm so excited to learn from you. They're like, no, I'm excited to learn from you. So the office is buzzing. We're just learning from each other.
That's so great to hear, Nabiha. You covered just such an important vein there, is just all of these design choices, all of these steps that have to be integrated perfectly and have to go so well. And even just the product fit as well. Like, we are good at this. This is our section. We're cornering this off. It's all so important. I love that you're thinking about this. And I like to ask for the future founders out there, other folks that are developing in cell manufacturing or just even cell therapies itself. I mean, I just really like interrogating that mindset, especially for how much you think about this. I mean, were there key design choices, or were there mindset adjustments you had to make as a team, as a group, just to say, we need to be patient-centric, have a focus on the clinic? Obviously, with some of the leadership positions that you and your team undertook, that helped as well. But were there mindset changes? Were there design choices that you kind of just made early on, where like, we need to have this, that you would recommend other founders?
All the time. So for me, when I started this company, I intentionally made that switch of going from, okay, I'm a scientist, I invented something interesting. Now I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and the goal of entrepreneurship is to build businesses. What does that mean? You have to build something that people want to pay for and it's valuable. So that was, I don't know, that was sort of obvious to me. And I don't know if we all trained that way in science. I need to do some soul searching of why I felt that way, but I felt that way. I was like, okay, now I'm an entrepreneur and this better be a real problem we're solving. So that's why there was just so much time that went into thinking about product market fit, doing hundreds and hundreds of expert interviews in industry primarily, and then also in academia with key opinion leaders and industry leaders in the cell therapy. So I'm very grateful. I have tons of amazing mentors in this space who are honest with me. I think one of the best ways to show kindness is to be honest. Like, okay, that's useful what you're trying to do. That is not useful. And I've had some like amazing, memorable moments that I quote all the time with many of my mentors in Kendall Square, where they're like, that's great. That's really interesting, but it's not useful for cell therapies. So come back. And I go off and I come back. So that never compromising on that business priority of building something useful and what is a problem that our technology uniquely solves. So I'll say this, Drew, for me, the way Cellino came into being is not maybe the ideal way in which I think startups should be built. I think startups should be built around, here's a problem. What's the best way to solve this problem? Let me go find the technology and the team. We kind of took a different route, which was, well, we have a cool, interesting technology and an amazing team. When we started, we had a way better team than we had the technology. And our first investors at the end, and Katie Ray, and at the end, Anne, were very honest about it. They just said, this team is incredible, and you'll figure out what you're going to do with the technology. So we were so good about, like, I lived in the customer discovery world my entire time, and I still spend a lot of time in that space, even as the company has grown, to really understand what are we solving for. And all of those insights would come back into the company, and Marina and Matthias would build what we were hearing. So the idea around laser-based removal of cells, that was not something that I was doing in my PhD. I was doing transfection. The idea around image-based analysis using AI was all Matthias. Like he was hearing that this seems to be a manual process where people are looking at cells by eye and making decisions. And there's a lot of, it's really interesting with iPSC, you can see a lot of visual cues by eye. So it's a perfect AI problem, especially with the UNets we have right now. It's perfect because you can see it by eye. A human can see it. Great, we can replicate that. And then thinking about, okay, cost is a big issue. So everybody's doing this in open containers. How do we make it cheaper? Again, like Marina, Matthias, myself, like getting to this vision of doing it in a closed singular chamber came through that customer discovery. And then we're like, wow, okay, when you put all of these pieces together, you see a magnitude of cost reduction that is like eye-popping and very compelling and changes how we as a society will think about cell therapies. So it's motivating, it's highly ambitious, and we have a lot of work to do, but that like vision keeps us going. So that business priority of like, okay, we're going to build a unique technology to solve this manufacturing problem and do it at low cost is super, super compelling. And I don't know, I mean, I think I have just an amazing job. I was thinking about this recently. So many people come to Cellino because they really want to be here. And we're about 50 now. And that is incredible because they're not coming here to make a ton of money or have like a position or power. I mean, this is so high risk and they know it, but they're here because they know we have a good chance to get this done based on the amazing progress we've had over the past 6 years. So every year our chances of success increase to get to this goal. It's really a matter now, I feel, of how much time it'll take and how much capital. So, but otherwise we're like, okay, this is a huge vision. I want to be a part of it because they could be anywhere else in the world if they were prioritizing other aspects of their life. So I find that really compelling. And I just, even when I think of my direct team, everybody that's coming on, like I was like, oh, I want to come and do this with you. I want to build this team. I want to build this culture. I want to change how we think about cell therapies. So that is, yeah, it's incredibly exciting and humbling.
It's truly special, what you've built, and to have a self-fulfilling culture that just does that, Nabiha. I'm just so excited you and the team have found that, and 50 strong going forward. It's so awesome, and just you all have found such incredible success to date from your founding. Pioneering this new novel development and manufacturing approach within cell therapy. I mean, at this point, raising almost 100 million to date, and just to scale up this complex manufacturing platform almost as a when, not if, right? So just taking a step back, Nabiha, just looking back, what have been the greatest challenges that you faced kind of building Cellino so far? I know you talked about this was kind of a reverse approach. It seems like product market fit took a bit of time, but just looking back, what's your perspective on it?
Oh gosh, so many lessons learned. So product market fit was a big one, and I think that is always existential for me. And I'm very grateful that our earliest investors, the Engine and Coastal Ventures, were just very patient with that. There was no rush. It was just like, okay, you have the money, keep exploring. We'll see where you land. And then when we realized, we're like, okay, I think we're ready. We have something. This is really compelling. The leading autologous iPSC developer, clinical developer in the country, like super motivated by what we're doing and like they want this. That was a turning point. I do think the pandemic posed its own unique challenges for all of us. I think as a society, as a world, and in the startup space, it's been really interesting to just go through that journey of experiencing the shutdown of the world in the early days of the pandemic, and then just not even knowing where payroll would come from in a few months, to keeping that company going, and then going through this massive bonanza capital raising year that so many of us benefited from. Like it was just like a whirlwind. And I think what was really interesting for me is going from like, oh, lean, scrappy startup to, oh, still like lean, scrappy startup, but we have to execute on many different levels and many different planes. And I mean, did I ever imagine we would raise like an 80 million Series A? No. that was not the plan when we went out to raise, but there was enough demand in the market that happened, and it was incredible. But it also meant like I had to grow into my new CEO role very quickly. I remember I went and went to see one of my mentors the day I signed that term sheet, and I said, "You don't know what happens now. I just signed a term sheet. I don't know what to do." And they're like, "It's gonna be okay. Let's talk about this and this. You gotta think about hiring, and this is how you're gonna spend." And I was like, "Tell me everything." um, so that shift of like really going from, okay, I'm going to try to do everything on my own because I'm so scrappy, to, okay, I need to build a team that I trust. I'm just going to throw stuff at this team. I already had that with my co-founders, but we were all very overworked. So thinking through what are the right hires, and we brought in an amazing COO, Abhi Kulkarni, who was at Medtronic. He was leading the neuroscience portfolio. He had a team of 1,000. And I remember when we were interviewing Abhi, we went through a recruiting firm, and that was my question. I was like, "Are you excited for this? We're only like 15 people." And are you? He's like, "Oh, I'm so excited. I'm dying to get back to startups, and like, let's do it. Like, it's gonna be amazing." And that taking that leap of faith, because we were so aligned in vision and values, and it's just been incredible. It's been an incredible year, and he is so solid and so down to earth and such a team player. It's not about egos, it's about being grounded. It's holding on to that spirit that the founders have always had of being a very accessible organization where the performers, the engineers, the folks who are bringing the ideas, the technologists, get to lead the innovation that is constantly happening. And he has created this amazing structure for us. We were able to hold on to that and scale. And now we're going through this new cycle of, what about this next wave of growth? How do we organize ourselves? So I would say all of those transition points are hard. So the hardest thing that I've gone through is like every 6 months I'm doing a new job, and having never done this job before, I actually hold myself to very high standards on performance. So it's like, okay, what do I need to deliver on team, on hiring, on fundraising, whatever it is? And it's like, here are the metrics. And I'm always evaluating myself. And I have an executive coach. I have some amazing CEO advisors. I actually have like a whole collection of them who have built many different industries that I work with on a weekly basis, because self-awareness is key. And sometimes that self-awareness will take you places that are really hard. And you have to give up and shed those comfort zones, because that's what the business needs. That's what the company needs. And if I can't do that as CEO going into this next phase, like, I shouldn't be leading this company. That's really how I feel about it. So just like quite a journey. And I think there's still more to come. And I think that's what's crazy about the part of scaling startups that we don't always talk about. Is we always talk about how things are not going great and things are hard, and maybe something doesn't take off. But there's also the flip side of like when things really start to come together, like there's also this like relentlessness. It's like this unstoppable energy that it's crazy. Like, we just had like some amazing team members join us this week, and I was like, wow, there's like 5 people that started on the same day. I don't think we've ever had that. And it feels like a different company. So I have to process that and be like, okay, what I'm doing what I always just go and say hi to everybody and like have a conversation and tell them how excited we are that they're here.
Yeah. Yeah. That self-reflection piece is so key. I'm so glad you brought it up. On the side too, just everything that supports you as a CEO, and the brutal honesty of how you're running Cellino at the top and saying, if I'm not cut for this, I got to step away. And,
Yeah.
the growth you've had on the amazing stuff, Nabiha, you've been an amazing CEO so far. It's been awesome to see just the meteoric growth of Cellino. And so I kind of wanted to press on that real quick, just give you a few minutes there, on the same note, what's just coming next for Cellino? What are you excited about? We talked about some future milestones, some great, trial data from iPSC data, but what's coming next from your perspective? What are you excited about?
Oh, I'm really excited about our next sets of technical deliverables. We have a lot of cool things coming up in the pipeline. I can't share more on the podcast, but you'll see some of it coming out, which is really great. Really exciting progress on the partnering side, on the regulatory side, and the team continuing to build on where we are. So just sustaining it, you know. So I what I'm really excited about is how do we maintain our culture of innovation and disruption and that close-knit feeling that you have coming to work that's like highly energizing as we grow into this next phase. So yeah, it's the best time we've ever had at Cellino. And it's interesting to say that because it's also the hardest work that we've done so far. It's now that transition from technology building and then also in parallel getting ready for clinical manufacturing. It is no small feat, and we totally respect how hard that's going to be, and we're leaning into it hard. Because it's not something I've ever done before, but I am very grateful to have a team that has done it many times, and just working very closely with them and addressing all of the questions and concerns they have.
We've covered so much around culture and tech and fit here, and I think I love what you have put together on the team front, and that it comes up almost every other question on the side of it. It's just so indicative of what you've built and the exciting stuff that's really coming out of the work that Cellino is building around the cell therapy space. But just to continue this on, I want to take some time to predict out to the future here as well, and continue on to see how you think Cellino is going to be in the future, how it integrates. But bringing this back to the clinic and just thinking about patient impact and looking forward
Mhm.
here, with the adoption of Cellino's platform and the scale up of precision, autologous cell manufacturing, we'll hopefully see those cost barriers changing radically in
Mhm.
cell therapy from what Cellino's building, among others. And just from your perspective, I know from your side, it's a when, not if kind of question, but where do you personally see this tipping point happening? And maybe not putting a date on it, but necessarily saying, are there key markers or are there indications like, oh, when this happens, right, we're going to have a chain of events? Are there things that
Mm,
are kind of in your head saying, this is a tipping point for you?
absolutely. So I would say the industry as a whole is now awaiting some of the first clinical trial results from those autologous iPSC-based trials that are starting up. And because of COVID and science and biomanufacturing, everything's hard. So we're making great progress. I would say there's definitely a slight slowdown in just the volume of clinical trials that are going to launch over the next 12 to 18 months because of the biotech capital markets right now being down. So the startups that are working in that space having to work harder to raise funding, delaying sort of their clinical progress. So what that means is there's the trials that are going to launch, there's just even more pressure on them, right? It's like, okay, there's not going to be as many launching. So the ones that are going to launch, like we're just going to wait and watch and see what happens. And we'll start to see some of that data coming out most optimistically end of this year, but I think more likely next year. That I think is huge because what it shows is okay, we can have allo versions of this, we can have autologous versions of this, and now if we solve the manufacturing for autologous, this becomes really exciting and patients are going to benefit. So that's what I'm waiting for with my team. But everything we're seeing behind the scenes is very exciting and promising. So that's part of the reason why we're continuing to build and looking at what other key strategic initiatives do we want to have in our back pocket when some of those big data points come out.
Oh, of course, it's so exciting. And just continuing that on to just while we're thinking broadly about future of technology design within cell therapy, as you are, a key component in manufacturing is obviously the supporting technology that goes into it as well. I mean, as a CEO, just as your team leader thinking about this at Cellino, are there enabling technologies that you're excited to have coming forward in the future in different parallel markets, different sides that you're looking into right now?
Oh, absolutely, Drew. So I'll say this to you, so you can also keep an eye out for me if you see any cool technologies. But we need to just and given your background in the genomic space, yes, so this is a great conversation. It's all about QC and analyzing the cell therapy product. Right now, it is like too expensive. It is too manual, and it's just never going to scale. So even if Cellino succeeds on everything we're trying to do on the manufacturing piece, the QC burden is so high. So how do we innovate on that? How do we get more consistency? How do we use AI in effective ways? And I'm nothing but optimistic, because what I know from my friends who are developing and inventing new QC approaches and technologies in industry and academia, there's going to be a big shift. And I think kind of curious to see what happens in the next 5 years, but that's going to be the piece we talk about all the time.
Gosh, there's so much there. I wish we had like another hour here. You got to come back, Nabiha, please. But I think there's a lot around there in the manufacturing side. I'm excited to see too as well. And it's amazing to see what Cellino's been able to develop on your own, just from a scale perspective, from the growth side. So I'm looking right there with you. So I'm looking forward to seeing more. But regardless, as we're closing up the episode here, I just wanted to touch on one last thing, one question subtopic before we kind of get into our rapid fire closing questions. Nabiha, you have been on the BIOS platform before from our founder spotlights, and you've kind of seen the work we've done, but you've also just been a phenomenal thought leader, and also just really an evangelist as a CEO that's out there, that's kind of a flag waver, a wave generator for your own company. I've always respected that out of founders, and I'm just curious from your perspective, could you talk about the role or the benefit of CEO evangelism from your perspective, maybe the mental model you've carried from your own work and career?
I also love the work that the BIOS community and you and the team do to support the storytelling aspect, right, of our journeys and what's happening. It's awesome because you see all the different ways to do it. And if in a parallel world, I'm bringing a physics reference, there's maybe a version of Cellino that doesn't exist because I chose not to engage on the public storytelling and being that public-facing CEO, because it is actually very out of my comfort zone. I'm good at it. I enjoy meeting people. I love talking to people, but I think naturally I love doing the science. I love being behind the scenes. But it was actually Alex Morgan at Khosla Ventures who gave me the mandate to go out and share my story, be more public facing. And it was very uncomfortable for me, but I listened to it. I kind of went home and I talked to my co-founders. I talked to my family about it. I was like, I'm very uncomfortable because we're still so early. We still have so much to build. I don't know if I'm really ready to go out there, but we did it. And 2021 was an epic year because of my fellowship with Jennifer Doudna, which was amazing. My win at TechCrunch Disrupt and Talk. Yeah. And the Series A, like, it was just like, wow. So I think all of that public facing work that I did led to our Series A happening the way it did. That's the reality of it. I don't know if it would have happened at that magnitude or that pace where I couldn't keep up with the investor conversation for like a few weeks in August. It was just like wild. So I think it's worth it. I think it's just important to find balance because I want to be conscious of where are we doing the storytelling? What is the motivation behind it? So when we did it around 2021, it was all about building momentum for the raise and finding folks who are excited about this vision because we need the money to build something that's going to change the world. And then like when we did the Series A announcement, I had a very specific focus. It's about hiring because we needed to double our team within 6 months. So hiring. So a lot of focus on tech outlets, making sure we were out there to recruit, and it was amazing. And now I don't know, it's kind of a quiet period for us. Like there are things happening. We're active. We were very fortunate to win our category in the ARPA-H Dash a few months ago, which was super exciting and motivating to have that public conversation around autologous cell therapies, your cure yourself. But it wasn't directly planned. We were opportunistic about it. So with all of that being said, there will be times in your startup life where you should do it. And I think I did it at the right time. And I want to be thoughtful about when we do it in the future.
Yeah, for sure. It's such an interesting conversation too about the when and the how, and because someone like you has balanced it so well. It's amazing to even hear the genesis of where it came from. But I appreciate you kind of running through it, because I know it'll just help so many folks that are thinking of the same things, same roles. So I know we're coming up on time here, Nabiha. I want to be conscious, so we're gonna wrap up. We just do a few rapid fire questions really to cap things off in these episodes. And so one thing I just love asking to kind of start these off is, just imagine it's 2050, biotech 2050. Could you kind of describe the cell therapy field? What challenges have we addressed? What diseases have we treated? Where are we going from then?
Incredible. So we're doing on-site manufacturing of personalized cells at hospitals and clinics all over the US in a decentralized, low-cost way across at least a dozen disease areas.
And yeah, by that same token, continuing on as well, where do you see Cellino as well? As far as in 2050 and that growth, where do you see yourself?
Yeah, I see all these purple server racks manufacturing human cells at those hospitals.
Perfect. No, we need it, and if Cellino's a solution, it's amazing the impact that it could have, and it's great to see that side. Any other closing thoughts you have, Nabiha? Just shameless plugs in general that you would have closing out for yourself and Cellino?
It's so exciting to catch up with you, and I really enjoyed the conversation. What a fun conversation. We should do this more, and we always have fun talking to each other, so it's great. A plug for Cellino, hey, we're hiring, we're growing, so if you're interested in joining us on this mission, check us out, and we'd love to hear from you.
Always great to have you on, Nabiha. Thank you so much again for this fantastic hour. We hope to have you on soon. You're welcome anytime, but thanks again, Nabiha, for your time.
Thank you, Drew. This was a blast.